Bad Moon. Bad Moon is a 1996 Canadian-American horror film about a mother and son who are threatened by their brother, who is struggling to overcome the curse of lycanthropy. Plot. During a work expedition in Nepal, photojournalists Ted Harrison and his girlfriend Marjorie are attacked by a werewolf. The werewolf snatches Marjorie, and Ted attempts to rescue her, but is bitten on the shoulder. He manages to kill the werewolf with his shotgun, but fails to rescue Marjorie alive. We then see Janet have an altercation with a con man. Seeking seclusion, Ted moves into a trailer in the woods. Eventually, he invites his sister, Janet, and nephew, Brett, to his lakeside home for dinner. Upon seeing him, the family dog, Thor, runs into the woods. Catching a scent, Thor is led to human remains hanging from a tree branch. Meanwhile, Ted lies to Janet and tells her that Marjorie left him and returned to Seattle. Janet invites him to stay with them, but he refuses and insists they leave before sunset. It's important to note that the scenery was beautiful. A trailer by the lake with a forest behind it is sublime. The next day, authorities investigate the remains of several missing hikers and a park ranger, found in the woods near Ted's trailer. Fearing he might be found guilty, Ted calls Janet and accepts her offer. Upon arriving, Thor again becomes suspicious of Ted and acts hostile toward him. Later that night, Thor follows Ted into the woods and finds him transformed into a werewolf and handcuffed to a tree. Meanwhile, Janet ventures deeper into the woods in search of Thor. Aware of the danger, Thor brings her safely back to the house. There's an episode where uncle and nephew watch TV and discuss werewolves. Brett says that a werewolf needs a full moon to turn, then Ted refutes this and tells him that a werewolf can turn at will even if there isn't a full moon. Brett says that they need a silver bullet to kill a werewolf. Ted doesn't refute or admit it, he just says that they also die if you blow their head off with a shotgun. So this discussion between uncle and nephew is quite strange. It's not common for there to be so much friction for a conversation like this. The next morning, Janet sees a news report about the murders and confronts her brother for not telling her the reason for accepting her invitation and asks her to stay permanently. Ted tries to warn her by advising her to pay attention to Thor's sudden changes in behavior. He also implies that the murders were committed by a wolf. She ignores him. Later, as the sun sets, she leaves her trailer hoping to chain herself up again. Thor, knowing what is going on, barks until Brett lets him out of the house. She runs into the woods and discovers that Ted has arrived too late to handcuff himself. Thor tracks Ted back to the backyard and Ted attacks him, but the dog fights back. Janet wakes up and turns on the deck lights, scaring Ted. She sees Thor injured and calls the sheriff. However, when she goes to Ted's RV to tell him, she finds a book about werewolves, with gruesome pictures of Marjorie's body and some of Ted's victims attached. You wonder why Ted kept the pictures of Marjorie, but more importantly, why he lied to his sister about her. Ultimately, it wasn't his fault, it was the other werewolf who cursed him. She also finds a journal in which Ted details his confusion at not finding a cure for his illness, and his hopes for peace with his family. Later that night, the peddler who had earlier tried to frame Thor for an attack returns to Janet's yard intending to kill Thor, but Ted fatally wounds him. The sheriff questions Janet about Thor and informs her that the peddler was attacked by a wild animal. His mutilated body was found near her property. She asks if it could have been a wolf, but the sheriff dismisses this and advises her to send Thor to the pound. Disbelieving Thor could be the killer, she confronts Ted, who provokes Thor into attacking him. As a result, Thor is taken to the pound. This sends Brett's nephew into a frenzy. Ted urinates in Thor's doghouse and becomes hostile toward Brett. That night, Janet confronts Ted in the woods. He accuses her of not listening to his warnings and of not knowing the truth from the start. As he transforms, she flees back to the house and retrieves a revolver hidden in the kitchen. Meanwhile, Brett manages to slip away and free Thor from the kennel. Thor returns home just as Ted is about to attack Janet. A vicious fight ensues, ending with Ted throwing Thor across the room, seemingly killing him. Brett, after returning home, is nearly strangled by Ted, but Janet fires several bullets at him. Thor then lunges at Ted, knocking them both out the window and into the yard. Ted, badly wounded, retreats into the woods, but Thor follows him until dawn. Ted, now human, emerges from behind a tree and tells a reluctant Thor, "Do it." Thor kills Ted. Afterward, Janet apologizes to Thor for taking him to the kennel. Suddenly, Thor as a werewolf approaches her, but it turns out to be a nightmare. Comments. The film was not well received by critics or audiences. Box office sales were low, largely due to the film's poor effects. Janet's performance was also heavily criticized. This, in turn, contributed to the film's failure. Still, it's a must-see for werewolf fans. That's all for now.